You are sick today.
I am sick today. I'll be moderating today.
Moderation. That's good. So here we are on the stream again. Um, Developer credibility today. What a great topic, isn't it? So a little bit like for the beginning to warm up. Before you get incredible, try to be credible. Isn't that a great one?
It is a great one.
Because
We, we
people
need
are
we need we need t-shirts. We need slogans, t-shirts. Callum has been making
first.
a list for all of the catchy our tech journey phrases.
Yeah, and it is a little bit about that. So I hear that so often that developers feel incredible in what they do because they can do things most people on this planet don't understand. And I know that because I was one of those people. But in reality, if you put this en in before incredible away, if you slice it away, then credible is there, and you really need to ask yourself if you are a credible person. And today we want to solve the question: what is a credible person, and what does it actually have to do with culture? Because we are still in the culture track, which means we are still talking about culture first approach, what it is, and why we should have it, right? Okay. We have six in let's say 20 minutes, round about 20 minutes. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Two people will join us, Zacharias and Jonathan Schultz, CTO and hiring strategist or professional,
Mm-hmm.
HR maybe. I don't know if I should call Jonathan HR person because, in my opinion, he is a little bit more than that. And it's very interesting because, especially those two positions, have a lot to do with taking care of the culture. So CTO is the role of the CTO is very important to connect the several departments with each other, and make them not departments anymore. And this is actually all about culture. And HR is about, if you put new people into an existing culture, you change the culture. And Jonathan Schultz actually was the first time I heard those phrases, or this definition is the culture requirement. So what is a culture requirement? It is he will then explain. So I don't want to pull this away now, but it is actually very important, and it made me think a lot about that, especially when you hire people, that you cannot just hire blindly or just because someone is able to do TypeScript or to do Golang or whatever. You need to be sure that this person will fit into the current culture or add something to the culture. But what you shouldn't do is destroy a culture, because if you destroy a culture, or change the culture step by step into a toxic one, you won't get things done anymore, and you won't go anywhere, and you won't be able to fulfill your mission anymore. And this will lead into, let's say, the opposite of well-being for everyone who's working in that company. And I see that way too often, and this is the reason why it is actually my main topic. Yeah, great. That was the introduction. We have several people online today. Very, very nice to see you all. Thank you for being here again. I don't know, it's something around stream 40, I think. If you want to have more information about that, you can find the two last issues were about culture, and the next one will be as well in my blog. Take a look at that. Have I forgot something, Dennis, for the introduction today?
If you would like to find us in written form, or if you just want to have links available to you for the video recordings, or the video recordings that have subtitles, or the ones that are a little bit curated and shortened, you can always check out our Substacks. So Adrian covers the Wednesday topics, I cover the Thursday topics. That's how we decided to split it. That's also how we decided to split monetization without forming a company, because it's very difficult to run a remote only podcast while also connecting with the audience. So the links for that are Snackable CTO and Crafting Tech Teams, Substack.com. You have fully fledged domain name, but people can find your links more on your link tree, which is on the screen right now. And my links are usually on my LinkedIn and on my Substack. That's for the most part. The links. I am putting together. There was a request regarding putting together tracks of what we did cover so far. So we had quite a few long-form tracks about certain topics, like engineering culture, continuous delivery, platform engineering, TDD. I will be preparing a post and a sort of a mishmash of playlists where you can find the relevant videos, so that because they do form a narrative whole across like a 2-3 month period. If you want to stay in touch with that, in case you miss some, we'll make it easier for you to find them.
Great. We have talked about the idea of saying no in the last week, and I started to do clips again. Let me know in the comments if you like those clips, actually, because I have a lot of fun doing those with my GoPro camera.
I have to mention the one where you did that one inspired me to do something similar. The
This
one
one
where
with
you
the
had
clown
the white,
nose. No.
the white shot with the headmask on top of the Substack post. That one was really crisp, and it was article relevant. So that one I think flowed really well. Also as like a medium, much more than shorts. Shorts are nice and all, but there's something about the vertical format and the short attention span that makes it more entertaining, not so much educational or insightful. That's just my opinion.
Okay,
But
let's become an entertainer now and try to. I need a better lighting actually on my camera. It is not bright enough, especially in dark rooms, but this is not the topic for today. Of course, we want to tell. So, the topic of those things were saying no. Okay? So, you as a developer, or maybe an employee in your company, are you actually able to say no? So I imagine most of the people here are actually something in the software development space. Your product owner, your CEO, your CTO, engineering manager is coming to your team, telling you deadline next week. Every one of you instantly thinking, oh my God, this is impossible. What do? Do you say no? Or do you say we get this done somehow, we are heroes? What are you going to do? Let's be honest to yourself. You don't need to answer. I would be interested in the comments if you like to say that. Yes, or would you say yes or no? Or you are, let's say, maybe indifferent or insecure about this. I know out of my experience that most of the developers I worked with, or I saw in other companies where I worked with them, that they would say yes. Yeah, that's bad. This is actually bad because this is working one time, and the second time you bear or you have extra weight from the stuff you have failed in the first one. The shortcuts you have taken, the technical depth you have built up, every of those little things are then in the second one, then again. And in the third one, you will have the stuff you haven't then refactored and corrected in the first two things. And this is one of those things. You don't pay back as fast as you could. In reality, you always run from deadline to deadline. And those deadlines are no deadlines. No one is dying. This is one of those aspects. No one is actually dying. Those are miscommunicated milestones. And the problem here is that, first of all, why don't you do the no in this case? Why don't you go the way in saying, no, we can't do that as a team. We need to stop here. This is not engineering. This is just rushing and being a worker node, or let's say multiple worker nodes. Why is that not the case? People know that they will be, let's say, this is basically the imperative way. Someone will just overrule and say, just do it now. This is why you're here. And why is that? Let's be honest now. Why is that? Most of the time, the team lacks credibility. Maybe it's a new team. It doesn't have any credibility. Maybe there are not enough engineers who have the credibility, or there are senior engineers who actually are no senior engineers and don't have credibility. But in fact, the people who doing that to you in that moment don't know what you can actually do and why those things actually matter, because they simply don't trust you. Let's be honest now, real talk today, no BS or something like that. They don't trust you. And this is the problem. People don't trust you, business people. And I know that because as CTO, as employer, I'm talking a lot with those people, and I'm one of those people. And it's oftentimes the case that you ask yourself, what actually happens here? You know, so I heard that so often from others, from CEOs, business owners who ask me, can we trust our developers? Yeah, can we trust them? No, let's be honest. Can we trust our developers? And what is trust? Trust would mean in that moment that you would say, as a developer, no, we are taking responsibility and ownership here. We want to have a product done, let's say in several months, and we need to take some milestones in order to get that right. We need to do this and that. But for this, you need to have already the necessity to have built up in some way or another credibility in order to have enough trust built up that people believe that this is correct and we need to have a course correct. This is possible. I know that from myself. It is, but you need to build up this trust. And this is what we want to talk about today, the culture aspects of the 3 pillars. The 3 pillars are, I've described it in my newsletter. Let me take a look if I have it here real quick. Of course not. It's always like that. Wait a second. There it is. I quickly share, and I already see our 2 hot joins are already waiting. After that presentation, I will let them in. Share screen. Now, not the wrong one would be nice. There it is.
Not the one with your bank statement.
Yeah, I think I'm right. Okay, so the 3 pillars here. The first one, mindset, skills, and culture, of course, but mindset and skills. This is the individual level. And then we have the ownership and the maturity level. There's actually one missing, which is the responsibility. Those 3 are extremely important, and they are actually the team level. So this is how I define it. So when you have the right mindsets, if you have the right skill sets developed, you can take ownership, work in a mature way, and eventually take responsibility. And then, of course, take ownership for the product itself as a team. And all this leads to the overall mission, which is software engineering instead of craft. So craft is how to get things done in a programmatic way. Engineering is how to do it right in the long term to actually succeed with a product. And this is the big difference. Business people love to hear that. If you tell them, hey, we can create a great product which will scale, they love it. But they don't believe you that this is actually the case. They will think you will just find another way to get things done quickly, or procrastinate a little bit, stall the process a little bit, all those kind of things. And believe me, it is what it is like that. People think like that. They don't understand it. They don't know what refactoring is. If you come up with something like refactoring and you tell the people in the business sector, we need to refactor at least 60% of our code base because Dave Farley said that in his book or wrote this in his book. And they ask you, so why shall we rebuild the application 60% again if we already have built it? Are you incompetent? So this is what business people ask in that moment. I had that so often in the last 15 years, so often. And you need to make sure that people believe you, and this is the third one, in software engineering aspects, this is extremely important to understand. And you need to make sure that because you have built up all 3 pillars in your team and as an individual, you can prove that this is actually the case. And this is not done overnight. This is a long-term process. A lot about culture, a lot about cultural requirements, a lot about own mindset, team capabilities, and about, let's say, it all starts with willingness to do something, even though you might not get any support from the business side. You need to earn it first. This is my message I want to give you today. But I may be not the only one think or having a opinion about that developed. Today we have two guests with us, and of course Dennis, who might who probably have an opinion about that. We have Zach Blackman and Jonathan Schultz in the lobby, and I would ask everyone, shall we let them in? Yeah, of course we shall, right? So are you ready? Thumbs up, guys. Are you ready? Can you? Yeah, two thumbs up, and there they are. Hello, everyone.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for
Morning,
joining
morning.
us.
Hey. So nice to see you. I think this is a very interesting discussion round now, and let's put the guests up. So I think on the stream first time on this format, Jonathan, we already streamed together, right?
Yeah.
So we have some claps on LinkedIn. Someone is hitting the buttons. Great. Okay. Yes. So culture. Culture. So Zach, you're a CTO. Culture is something you should know about. And Jonathan, you told me about the cultural requirements, right? Something, and I already told the audience. Maybe we can quickly, or after the introduction, of course, of you both, you could start with explaining what cultural requirements actually are, because I think this is a great thing to have. But maybe start with introducing yourselves, maybe a little bit, who you are, what you do, and what you're going to do in the next month. Zach, let's start.
Well, thank you for the invite. Glad to be here. So I'm a technologist, CTO. I've been a technologist since I think I was 12, if I remember correctly, when I got my hands on a TRS-80 Model 1 and didn't take my hands off it until they pried it out of my hands. But so I've been doing this now for 20 years. No, 40 years, excuse me. 20 years in cloud modernization. Worked for Accenture, all that stuff. And now I have customer obsessed engineering, which is really very close to this topic. I mean, it's very much about building trust, building value, focusing on delivering that value to your customer, protecting your business premise, and doing stuff that actually matters, as opposed to just checking a whole bunch of boxes off and saying, yeah, I worked all day long. But what did you actually do, right? So that's what I care about most passionately.
I just posted Boss Logic, which is customer obsessed engineering, actually. So if you're interested, it's one of my favorite newsletters. And I saw Zach on some point starting to interact with my content. And then I saw how much overlap there is. So pretty much, I think there is a lot of overlap in our ideas of how to do things, how to be a CTO, how to handle things, how to do migrations, how to handle culture. So I'm very, very happy that you have made it today. And yeah, thank you. Jonathan, how's about you?
Quick introduction. I've spent most of my career staffing small to medium-sized software startups. And I've had the opportunity to watch what we do and how we do it change radically over the past, let's say, 20 to 30 years. So my mission at this point is to work as an outsider, working with leaders to fix what's broken. I mean, we complain about it from every possible direction about how hiring is not delivering what we're hoping for. And it's not a complicated formula, but it does you must take the time to step out of where you live all day long and think it through. And most leaders just simply don't have the time. You're tasked with so many things on your plate to say, hey, we need you to be an expert at hiring and building great teams. That's a big task. So,
Yep.
I'm working to position myself to be that for people, because I've just tested and iterated along the way to develop systems that work and deliver results. So that's where I'm at this point. I try to write a little bit on LinkedIn when I can to provide some insights to folks that are looking to take that move and make that move. And Adrian and I just synced up. I don't know how long ago it was, but like immediately upon following each other's content, because he's thinking beyond skills in hiring. He's looking at how culture impacts. He's looking deeply into how a leader's skills and their style impacts hiring and hiring the right people. Because it's not about, we can all attest to the fact that it's not about hiring someone with the right skills. It's hiring somebody that has a great fit across all of those spectrums, right? Culture and values and everything that goes into that. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. So actually, everyone can set up a LinkedIn ad and hire someone, right? So the hiring is not the hard part. The hiring the right way and adding something to your culture and not actually bringing your company into stagnation because of let's say made several bad hires in a row, or even let's say even when it comes to, or especially when it comes to important positions, then we really need to make sure that it's actually a good fit. This is then the cultural requirement, right? In those cultural requirements, I never saw them before in a hiring process, and this is what made me so interested in you. Next to that, every time I post something, you come up with so great questions in the comments. So it's really challenging to think about your questions, and this is what I actually like. So you are really a person who is thinking about what others post on LinkedIn, and this is what I really value. Okay, so thank you very much for both for your introduction. For the audience, if you have any questions, how to reach out to both, just ask. We are here to answer questions. Dennis, anything from your side?
Well, I'm gonna keep it short today because I sort of my voice comes and goes, so I'm contributing as much as I can. From my perspective, maybe just a temperature check with the audience. What are some, let's say, modern guidelines for good hiring hygiene, for culture fit? What is important? What is not important? Zach, I saw you have a playbook posted online. Jonathan, what would you say? What would each of you say is a great place to start from as an engineering leader or as a CTO, as a founder? What direction to start the recruitment or really the building of the engineering culture or the overall company culture from? Values, more traditional ways of creating the pillars that make up the DNA of the company, or more experimental, more let's hire fast, fire fast. Do you have a certain approach here? Is it on a spectrum? Are you always following one thing? That would be sort of my first question for both of you.
I have a few thoughts there. That's a very, very broad topic, so we could probably spend hours. But the first thing that comes to me is looking at the overall health of your team, and that means a lot of things. I've been talking with a potential client, and they're coming in and they're saying, "Oh yes, we have all these pods. We have 10 people on every pod." And the cost of the pod, because it's in another country, it's pretty low. And I'm immediately thinking, oh boy, we're just cranking out teams with 10 butts in chairs, and we're not thinking about the health of the team. We're not looking at the team and saying, does this pod or team or whatever you want to call it have a holistic capability? Are we going to have the right leadership, the right architecture, the right attention to quality practices, the engineering leadership, the ability to produce enough code with, and is the team just too big? By the time you get to 10 people on your pod, I'm starting to, raise an eyebrow thinking, that's a big team. Yeah. Most of the time I like to take a look at the team itself, standing on its own, not so much in the context of the company. I mean, there's definitely, you have to fit into company culture and things like that. But if you don't have a healthy team that likes working together, that can support each other, that has all of the characteristics you need in order to get some work done, then you're just starting with a bad foundation from day one. So when I'm hiring somebody, if there's a job rec that I'm supposed to be filling, and I look at the job rec and I say, well, that's not what my team needs, then I'm going to immediately push back on that and say, look, we have to find the right people for this team. Maybe this team needs, more architectural leadership, or maybe whatever it is. We're going to make sure that team itself is healthy and productive, right? Mm-hmm. I think too many companies don't do it. They're just, we have to have 10 teams and there's going to be 10 people on each team and it has to fit a certain price tag, and then we'll see what kind of quality we get out of that.
There's a template for each team. It has to be one of this and two of that and X of, and then every 6 of them have one of something shared. So it just follows the rest.
Look good on paper.
And even worse, it might have something like, and then the product owner is going to be splitting his time across 3 different teams.
And one of the senior leaders will be an engineer and part-time managing another team and remote staff augmentation. Jonathan, your take on this?
Wow, well, like Zach said, you laid out a huge landscape of things that we could talk about. Zach went a little bit wider, so let me just focus in on one thing about the core of culture, and I think I don't think we start off with a mistaken idea, but it seems to kind of twist into areas that don't make as much sense when we try to build cultures. So, I mean, we have to start. When I'm starting, if I'm going to help Zach with the search, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dig really deep into what they're doing right now. And that comes from what is Zach's, what are the values that Zach holds that have started to replicate out into the culture? Because culture, we can look at culture all day long, but it comes down to our values and beliefs. That's where it emanates from. And as soon as we start there and recognize that, then we can build an aspirational culture on top of that, saying this is where we want to be. We're all humans. We're all imperfect. We all have baggage we bring along, but this is where we see our culture now. This is how we're making decisions. This is how we're interacting, all the things that go into culture. But this is where we want to move to. And we want to talk about these things. We want to privately address things that don't really meet the culture. If we have this kind of conflict in a team meeting and we're like, that's not going to build the kind of team culture that we want, then we're going to address that. But if we don't document that, if we pretend like this aspirational culture is where we're really at, because that's what we put up on our website, it says this is how we run our company, that's just kind of fooling ourselves. And so we have to come back to that core, and then we can build on that in any direction we want. I'm an implementer of policy. I don't tell people what their culture is supposed to be. I might suggest that something that I see in their culture maybe isn't going to help them build meritocracy into their culture. For example, maybe there's too much yes man stuff going on in their culture. I can point out some stuff, but I'm just the mirror reflecting that, and then building the interview. Speaking of hiring, building the interview process around that, right? If Zach is talking all about this is how we are, but that's not how we are, because we're still in our we're not where our aspirational culture says. Then we have a gap in our interview process, in our hiring process, where we're saying we're one thing and we're not, and that creates a mess. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely. There was a article I was reading this morning, McKinsey. I love-hate McKinsey. Sometimes it's great stuff. Sometimes
you said they have.
I don't know.
They said something good. Yeah, I think yesterday you said.
Yeah, there were a couple of articles they came out with that were good, and I think I threw 1 or 2 of them on my blog. But the one this morning was very relevant to this. we'll have to look it up and put it into the show notes, but it had to do with employee dissatisfaction. They ran some numbers and they came back the top three, and we're talking about some pretty big numbers. This is 10, 11, 12% of each of these categories. Number one was compensation. Okay, we're probably not going to solve that one here. But numbers 2 and 3, one was lack of flexibility at work. And I think that speaks directly to culture, especially in this day and age. Number 3 was that employees, and this was 11% of employees coming back saying they don't feel like their work is meaningful and contributes to the company. And that I hate hearing things like that. I mean, I want everyone on the team coming to work just feeling like, this is important. This is fun. This is something that I enjoy doing. I'm here because I'm making a difference, not because I'm getting a paycheck and I have to pay the bills, right?
This is what I refer very often to, the disconnect between business and development, especially for software developers in this case, where they actually come to work, need to solve some random tickets of a Kanban board. They don't know exactly why. It is half described, most of the requirements are roughly there. They do something and then they, get some comments that they need to change something, but right now, because it's important, maybe you can do some over hours. Then you basically do that and then you go home and next day is the very same. You don't really understand why, and you cannot connect to the mission of the company or to the product. So you actually cannot do software engineering because it is just programming. You just program down like a worker node what you are supposed to do. And I think I would even say the numbers, how I experience that in the small to medium-sized companies, is way higher when it comes to that, especially in the service-oriented sector, where you don't work on a product, but you work for other companies on their products, on contract or just service contract, agency work. I see that there very often that people are very dissatisfied because of exactly that. They don't know why they're doing that, but there is extreme stress there. And I would like to cross pass that to Jonathan in this case. Do you see differences in different company types, like a SaaS company, a service agency, or something like that, in terms of culture when it comes to what Zach just said with the 11% of people are not connected to the actual mission? Is that something you take care of in the hiring process?
I wouldn't use the phrase "take care of that" in the hiring process. We definitely want to be tuned to this during the hiring process, right? Because any good hire, as we already said, it's not skills. It's thinking in terms of, is this guy a good fit? And so to start that process, it seems counterintuitive, but what are they going to learn? Are they going to grow? And in what ways? And do they see the work that they're going to be doing as meaningful, purposeful, impactful? And at the end of the day, we all have to do junk we don't want to do, right? But at the end of the day, at the end of the week, do we look back at that week and go, I feel satisfied. My career is good. I like what I'm doing. I'm proud of what I'm doing, as opposed to, I see no meaning in this. We're just churning in circles, and I get something, I fix it, but I don't even know if it was important. I've heard plenty of stories of, our team started on this, and then business priorities changed, and all the work that we just did got put on the shelf. There's lots of different ways we can lose meaning, and if we see our work having no impact, then the frustration just slowly climbs. And so, yes, I think we can really address this in the interview process, because we should be dialed into, communicating as transparently as we can who our team is and what we're building and why we're building it and where we're going, so that somebody can buy into that. It's not about, I'm going to do a great interview and I'm going to select the right guy. No, it should be from the get-go, we should be thinking we need to find somebody who really wants this job. And I don't mean wants this because they're desperate and they're out of work and they've been interviewing for 6 months. I mean, like, they see themselves as a great fit and they see this as a career move that's going to push them forward or draw them forward.
I just write it down a question for the audience for what you just said.
We have some questions in chat piling up slowly. I'm gonna go with newest first because I think that'll get us past the stale bread effect. I think that's Thomas asking, every now and then the vision is missing. Every now and then you need someone to remind you. What do you think? So, well, let's jump past the recruitment phase. Imagine you're just stuck with a team that is cash flow positive. The business is making sense, but the vision comes and goes. What are some common techniques or like humane approaches to realign with a North Star? Maybe question the old one. Maybe there is one, but it's too old and it doesn't make sense anymore. What would you recommend? Like a sane touch point, a sane way to ground the team in reality.
So, I mean, you alluded to it right there, which is you have to have a way to make the vision tangible. And that really gets back to having a playbook. But, you know, just having the playbook isn't going to solve it. I mean, what a playbook is really about is involving the team and making sure that the team really understands what's going on. There are too many projects out there where, you know, the architecture board or, you know, someone creates the vision and the overall strategy, and then just some magic happens and a pile of work shows up in front of a bunch of engineers, and, you know, there's no connection there. It has to be holistic. It gets back to the health of the team. The team has to own the product. The team has to understand the product. That means they have to be involved in defining the vision. They have to be there when the strategy to realize the vision becomes actionable, so that they understand, well, you know, if this is our vision over here, we're going to take these steps to make it a reality. And they have to contribute to figuring out what those steps are, so that at the end of the day, when you're sitting there coding something up, you can say, I'm coding this because I know that it's going to realize this piece of our vision over here, whatever that is. And I'm invested in it, and I helped create that, right? A playbook helps do that by just kind of creating the guardrails that say, don't forget all these steps along the way. I've been doing this for 40 years. I don't execute a project without my playbook because I won't remember all the steps. And then you get too far down the road and you realize, oh my God, I completely forgot something really important a long time ago. Well, now we're in trouble, right? So that's part of it. You know, I mean, it all comes together. You've got to have the team health. You've got to have the holistic team. You've got to have a playbook. You've got to have leadership that believes in this stuff and makes it a reality with the team. You know, there was, getting back to that McKinsey point about, you know, the team not being invested. Well, that the credibility comes on both sides of this equation, the management side as well as the engineering side. On the management side, if I had a team that didn't believe in the work, in the value of the work, that means I have failed as a team leader. I have not given them belief connection to the value. That means I have not led properly, right? And, you know, on the other side, of course, well, as an engineer, we need to, you know, build that credibility and investment in the product as well, and we have to be a credible engineer. So it's a, you know, we all have to fulfill that part of it, no matter what role we're playing, right?
Jonathan, when you've heard that, so I introduced the show today with this perspective of the developer who is not able to say no and just try to get things done in the heroic way. Is that something where people or let's say clients of you or companies of you asking you to take care of during the hiring process, that you actually filter out people who are more credible, who already have something, let's say, to say, or is it to help me a little bit in that moment, when we hire people, how is it out there in the companies? How much, how much weight put companies upon that topic? How important is that?
Wow, that is a loaded question. Simply because I think we all know it's critical, and I think we talk about it, and yet, like Zach was saying with his playbook, if you don't have a playbook to address that in the interview process, then you're not going to vet out the stuff that you should be vetting out, and we can think that our interview process is amazing, but have we tested it? How are we verifying that? Mm-hmm. It can be. I know leaders that have teams that run very effectively, amazing teams, and so how I help them more often than not is understanding why. What is it that they're already doing that's really working, so that they can sow that knowledge into the next group of leaders, right? Because a lot of it comes to them intuitively. They're just intuitively interviewing well, and they're intuitively assessing well, but putting some infrastructure around that. But I wish I could answer your question with it.
So to go a little bit forward on the time horizon there, how do you, what is your recommendation, or personally, how do you do it in your businesses? When things are going well or when things are not going well, on, let's say, on an individual level, so you can tell the problem is emanating from a person, but you're looking at it on a team's perspective, mm-hmm. right? So team capabilities, and you say, okay, this person needs more help, or this person is doing really well. How do you attribute that to a bad hire versus bad nurture? So bad mentoring, bad leadership, bad motivation, bad inspiration, bad fit with the mission. Maybe the fit was good, but the mission changed, and the fit was not reevaluated, right? So using e-commerce terminology here, like retail terminology here, how do you attribute how much of it is an acquisition problem versus a retention problem?
Right. So I'm going to pass this to Zach. I'd like to. not that I want to give up the question, because I'd love to spend a bunch of time on it. But I think that the answer to the question that you're asking is more about leadership and ongoing assessment than it is the hiring process. And then when he wraps, I just want to add just like one note about kind of what quality of hire looks like from my perspective. Yeah. Because I don't think anybody outside of HR, and they don't even really talk about it much, I don't think anyone outside of HR ever talks about kind of what's the formula for quality of hire. Like how do we kind of put some kind of mental metric around this as a leader? So Zach.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. So to kind of set the foundation, my hiring strategy is not to tick off a bunch of technical skills. I am looking for smart people who get things done and can solve problems. And at the end of the day, if we end up changing the language we're using, or the mission changes, or whatever, hopefully it's not that big a deal. I mean, sometimes, sure, if we're going from, Java and suddenly we have to pick up Scala, that's going to be a bit of a big lift. But hopefully everybody on the team can do it and look at it as an opportunity. So what I want is to create this environment of opportunity where even if there is major change, it's potentially fun. It's career development. It's an exploration of something new. It's picking up new skills. So the team can, by and large, say, well, okay, plans changed. This is great. I'm getting paid to learn a new language, to develop a new solution, to move forward. Now, I have occasionally had a few team members who just didn't get along with others. There's one that always sticks in my mind, and honestly, I've only had probably I could probably count the number of team members that I had to fire on one hand. And that's because I really believe in investing in my people, in my team.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they feel that, I'm going to provide them with the resources and the room and the support to scale and get to this new level, whatever it is. If I made a bad hire and I hired someone who was a little too junior for a particular job, well, that's on me. Now it's my job to make sure I train them up and give them the opportunity and the resources to do that. Now, like I said, there's the one fellow in particular that he couldn't take the time to support his team. He would come to the table, listen to a problem, and literally say, "That's not my job," and get up and walk away. Or say, "Well, you guys are smart enough to figure this out on your own. I don't have time for this," and go and do his own things. And we spent, probably the better part of a year trying to find common ground and provide the learning that investing in your team members and supporting each other is actually a worthwhile skill. And unfortunately, he couldn't get there, and ultimately, had to let him go. But
this is an important aspect that you say you let him go in this case, because I was listing this is actually the responsibility and the ownership and the maturity part, where I really say I take responsibility for being part of a team. So if I feel, let's say, like a senior developer, for example, I am a cornerstone of the team. And if I don't want to be a cornerstone, in my opinion, you're a senior developer, you can't take that role. And yes, it might be the best thing to say, okay, we need to say goodbye now in that moment, because maybe you find a better place, maybe you need to do freelance or something like that in order to play the lone wolf person, very good in something, but pretty much alone, not a team person, which is actually hard because software development without being a team person is actually a hard thing to do. And it always ends up, especially if you have multiple of those people, of those characters, it starts to become painful. And I quickly wanted to, because we don't have unlimited amount of time, because I think, Zach, you only have time on 5 minutes or 7 minutes, something like that. The initial question was not being able to say no. So when you have a team where a lot is going on like that, we have just described that, like the lack of responsibility, maybe lack of positive mindsets. So people try to work towards, happy hour or something like that, but not really towards a mission. How do you experience that? So just to have that original topic once covered is maybe to you both, starting with Zach in that case, just as a follow-up question. How does the cultural aspects affect this? So how is that when people don't take the responsibility, how does it affect this? And what would you recommend in order to be able to say yes? And when should you say yes or no in that, no. And when should you say yes or no in that case?
So context is kind of everything. I don't want to say that, you can never say no. Of course you can. But I think the way I look at it is everybody at the table is there to support each other. And by at the table, I mean the team, but the whole team. I mean, we should have the customer there. We should have product leadership, development, architect, and even if the most junior team member is sitting there thinking, wow, this is so far outside of my wheelhouse, I don't really know what's going on. I want them to invest in the team and bring this attitude of, I'm going to try to make things better. I'm going to put my ideas out there. I'm going to participate. I'm here to solve problems with my team. And, maybe you have the answer, maybe you don't. It isn't about whether you have the answer, it's about whether you're investing in your team. Because what's happening then is you have the cumulative or logarithmic brain power of the whole team focused on a problem, and you're going to find interesting new solutions. Now, if you have someone who consistently is just like, that's not what I do. I'm just going to sit here and watch everyone and look at my phone and whatever, and I'm not going to be a part of it. Well, I want to solve that. I would like to uplift that person to a point where they contribute, because I think it's good for their career and I know it's good for the team. And in time, if we can't get there, then as a team leader, I am going to naturally want to fill that role with somebody who makes the team stronger, always. When should that person sit there and say, I really cannot contribute to this? It's pretty rare, I mean, human brains are powerful things, right? We solve new problems all the time. To just step out of it and say, I have nothing to do with this, sure, there will be a few situations. I'm not going to try to help my wife explain the complicated things she does at work. Well, she works for a biopharmaceutical and she has, degrees in medical science that I can't touch. Okay, but we still talk about work together, and I still try to help her solve problems. So will I help her focus on, some kind of complicated medical regulatory problem where I literally cannot contribute anything? Well, no, sure, of course not. But could we talk about some team management issues together, or communication issues or other? Yeah, I'm always willing to have the conversation. And I think that everybody on the team needs to always be willing and interested in making that investment.
You should really subscribe to his blog. It's really a smart man. Just a quick follow-up question. Very good 10 years of experience, senior developer who can solve all technical problems, or the average team player developer? What do you prefer?
Well, I don't have enough data. Does the senior person have the equal passion and willingness to invest in the team?
Or I forgot to mention the lone wolf aspect. Sorry, maybe.
Okay. Well, all right. So I'll give you a quick story. I had there's a blog post. If you go to my blog and you search for hero, there is a blog post about this hero. He could solve everything, but he was a hero. He was a lone wolf. He was not a team player. And in a subtle way, not really intentionally, not consciously, but his approach to participating with the team was to allow crises to happen so that he could jump in and be the hero and solve the problem, and then retreat from the team and let the team stumble along on their own while he did fun stuff. He was not a teacher. He was not a mentor. He was not there to help his team grow. He was brilliant. He could solve all the problems. But the thing is, he kept leading the team to chaos. Again, not intentionally, but he would let them go in directions which I know he understood would fail. And he'd just kind of sit back and be like, yeah, I'm doing important stuff over here while I wait for things to get bad. Oh, yes, I can jump on it and save everything. I had to let him go eventually. It took time. I wanted him to be a fantastic team member, but ultimately it came down to a very direct conversation where I told him, look, this is the opportunity. You can become a leader and a mentor, or you can keep doing your lone wolf stuff. But if you do the lone wolf stuff, it's not going to be here. And he said he'd rather be a lone wolf.
And the
I
most
had the
frequent
very same experience lately. Yeah.
and the most frequent conversation with such people is that you ask them not to do heroics anymore, and they just can't stop because
Used to.
it's so ingrained to their identity
Mm.
or and to their feeling of value, of self-worth, or even just maybe that's their only contribution to the team for which they get
Jonathan,
recognized.
do you have still some time because it's basically 0.5 now here in CST?
Yeah. I have about 9 more minutes.
Okay.
5:10. I need to step away.
So maybe I was interrupting Daniel with going through the comments, and we always promise to go through the comments, and I think it would be a good idea to do that in the round of 4, to discuss those comments one after another. And if you have any more comments in the audience or questions, something you want to state, please do it right now. Right, Dennis, could you take over that?
Anjan has had a great question. She asked, is it wrong if the developer weighed the opportunity versus his or her plan for career trajectory? So I'm assuming this has to do with the opportunity to invest into the team, invest into the project, right? So this duality between, am I optimizing for myself and the team, just for the team, right? So what's the balance here? So context, most companies have a one-on-one metric where you're incentivized to get promoted or fired in the first few years, especially in FAANG companies. In medium-sized businesses, that's sort of usually being mimicked. So how do you maintain this sort of, how do I make sure I do the best that I can to contribute, while also there's this constant balance of, how am I going to be judged? Is it going to be individually measured or team-wide? What should they do?
I would say talk to your boss about it, because as somebody's boss, my job is to make sure that they have those career advancement opportunities. It's also my job to make sure that the team is doing well and the project gets delivered well. I can be a coach, a mentor, an assistant. We can plan together so that you are able to advance your career and also able to support the team in the best possible way. And there have been situations where I have taken some of my brightest and most cherished team members and said, I will help you find a new role, because I see that it is time for you to move on, and I cannot give you that opportunity on this team. I hated to lose them, but it was the right choice for everyone, because ultimately, if they stay and they're unhappy, well, that's never going to end well.
Other let's say pretty complicated problems which can arise, which are not immediately visible, and can be actually, let's say, lower the quality of the culture. This is what I saw quite often. So on some point in time, it might always, for not always, but for most people, make sense to leave and take some new opportunities, to see something fresh which motivates you again. Because motivation, or intrinsic motivation, is extremely important. If you have, seen everything already in the company, you know everything, you know every problem, it's becoming stall for you. It is becoming, it's not like, it's nothing you burn for anymore, right? The flame is not so bright anymore. So maybe you should move on to some point where there is more fuel for your flame, right? Let's go ahead.
Jonathan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've not heard this from many leaders, the exact way Zach described it, but I've coached many leaders that this is exactly the place that they're in. This is, and I'll relate this back to hiring a little, just real quick too. Engagement is all about motivation, and if a leader is really paying close attention to his team and knows where they're at and knows what they're building and knows what their career aspirations are, then he's going to see them starting to slow. he's going to see their growth starting to slow. He's going to see their engagement starting to wane a little bit. Either he has something bigger to offer, or the two of them should be together planning to use their networks together to get him someplace new. And maybe even, I've watched people replace themselves just because simply it was time for them to move on.
And to keep the momentum.
And just to relate it back to recruiting is, if you're constantly on the lookout to hire laterals, meaning somebody who's already been there, done that, has everything you possibly need, and there's like no gap left for growth or learning, then you're going to set yourself up for a lot of short-term people. Because if they're fast growers and they're the guys that you really want, like they're really smart, they're really good at what they do, then if you don't have some gap in that role for them, and if the company's not growing fast enough and you're not going to have a new role for them, how long are they going to last? A year, 18 months before they have to move on? And that's a revolving door that none of us want, but we often create it because we don't think we're overhiring, but we're overhiring. Zach, would you see that when you're looking at people too?
Absolutely. And I would say that is even more reason to communicate with your boss about these things, because as a team leader, I need to plan the growth of my team. And that can be complicated. In a large organization in particular, the complexities of making sure that my team members are getting the opportunities they want, that they're advancing, budgets, all that have to be managed. I can't just give everybody a promotion whenever I want. So that planning needs to take into account how the team feels, how each individual feels, how fulfilled they are, and how much they want to have new opportunities. I try really hard to make sure that I have quarterly sit-down discussions with everybody to talk about their career development, how happy they are, where they want to go, where they'd like to be in a year. And then I can take that back and I can plan to make sure the team is growing, that everybody's, happy along the way. If those conversations don't happen and, you hold it into yourself, and I end up losing somebody because we didn't talk about it and I didn't know they were unhappy, that's difficult. I mean, that can be devastating. A valued team member just leaves instead of ideally gets the promotion they want and gets new responsibilities and all that, and worst case, okay, we agree you should be moving on, let's coordinate that together, let me help you find the role, let's bring somebody else in, maybe you can mentor them before you go, at least it's a nice smooth transition.
Cool. That's actually an interesting conversation.
Is that the time for another question?
Yeah.
I think we have a minute or two.
Okay. So Thomas a while ago asked, to be honest, mostly a PO don't ask if something is manageable. They ask, do it now. Right. So
this was
context,
for me, I think.
Context being questions are binary. Is A possible? And maybe individually are plausible answers, but group-wise, the team disagrees on whether something is possible or not. But for a little bit more interesting discussion, most organizations are mimicking a sort of military organization in the way the titles are set up, the way the leadership is set up. So how do you, and most, at least non-senior engineers, or at least engineers without a lot of experience, they don't want to risk insubordination, essentially, right? So there's this constant balance between, I want to negotiate with what work I accept, but I don't want to be called out for insubordination. I don't want to be called out for being the person who gets a project and says this is not possible. So how do you balance that, right? So going from this binary, is it possible, is it not possible, having the conversation about what is, or how to nurture it, how to set expectations in a way that isn't overbearing.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Zach.
No, I've been talking a lot.
I was just going to say that, as much as we often think that these things are really particular to what we do, but this is a perfect example of something that's completely global, right? Everybody in every company, in every job, deals with this one thing. And I literally recorded my answer to this question and left it on my phone in the voice thing, so I could remind myself to get the phrase down almost word for word. And that, it's, what would you like me to put on hold in order to do this for you? Right? We have to be, that has to, like martial arts training, right? When a punch comes in, you need to know that it's that block. You can't think about it at that point. We need to retrain ourselves for this to be our gut reaction. This is our new instinct, which is great, no problem, absolutely. What should I take off my plate in order to make this a top priority? And is this a top priority? And as long as we're willing to ask this question all the time of the people who are calling us to do something else or add something to our plate, I think we even train them to expect a question. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm gonna make it a little bit harder, because you made it individual, right? Like this is really easy if I'm negotiating for myself. But what if this is now about the team and there needs to be a quorum about, can the team? I know you can't take it individually, but can the team take it? Right now, this is a much more complex debate, and maybe your solution doesn't work for that, right? So,
Zach, do you need to go, or do you want to say something?
I do need to. I have a client I need to jump on a call with, but I did want to make one point here, which is to say that this is a very difficult conversation for an individual to have, and I completely agree with the point that don't say no, say wonderful. I'm happy to do that. What can I take off my plate? What am I going to postpone instead? That's the right, always be embracing of, yes, that's fantastic. Let's do that. But what's the compromise? But the point I want to make is these are not decisions that the individual should be having to make. This should be a team decision, and there should be a framework in place to make the decision that everybody's on board with. That's what the playbook is for, right? That is where you have the guardrails in place. You have the systems in place to say, this is how we evaluate these decisions as a team. And we've all agreed to it. It's documented. We built the playbook. We're going to do it. And then it's no longer the PO making decisions about what is next. It is a team effort to prioritize, assess the work, make the decision of what's next, come to agreement, and get alignment and move forward. It's got to be a team effort. That's how it's healthy, right?
That does make sense.
And with that, I love this discussion, and I wish I could stay, but I do have to go. So thank you
Won't
very
be the
much
last
for the
time. Won't be the
invitation.
last time.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
Thank you
you
so
making the
much.
time.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Good
You
to
bet.
meet you, Zach.
You as well, Jonathan, and huge pleasure, Adrian, Dennis. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
So, of course, the saying no hook of this show, it is actually not of the show, but the last post this week was a little bit of a hook, of course. The saying no is what's going on inside yourself when you hear something which is actually short-sighted and you say, no, we need to do it differently. Of course, you can then say it correctly so that you actually don't create even more, let's say, tension in between, let's say, departments, if you would call it like that. There should not be any departments in that case, but there's another story. So it would be like, you should say no, but in the same moment, you should come up with something like Jonathan and Zach just said. It is about, we need to take compromises if we do it like that, or do we change the course entirely? So what I pointed out in the beginning of the week was, when you, for example, say you need to rush towards the next milestone, and you need to do that 3 times in a row, which is pretty common out there, then you will have some problems with your code base, with the quality, with all the shortcuts you have taken, with so many problems stacking up that on some point the entire process leads to a form of stagnation. Everything becomes turn stall actually. And this is what we need to learn about. And you as a developer, and this is my take on that, you should step up the game and say, no, I'm an engineer in reality. It's not so much about the programming part right now. So I could program something that is actually working. My craft is enough to get this milestone done somehow, but I do want to do it right? I want to have, let's say, in the third iteration, it should still be a process everyone is happy to be in, and it's actually contributing to the mission still and not going into stagnation. And this is being an engineer and saying, no, we need to do it differently. Let's talk about this. This is how I put it. So I'm not so polite anymore. This is just because of personal experience, when I just see that sometimes you need to be very clear. Maybe this is the German attitude I have, and not so much the US, let's say, political correctness. I learned from DigitalOcean, when I'm a business partner of DigitalOcean, and when I make presentations with them together, they tell me to not use problem as a word. They always choose challenge. It's a better word. And I say, no, it's problem. It's a problem I want to solve. So I'm very strict about it's a problem. We need to get rid of the problem. And they call it challenge, like the motivation.
Challenge solving just doesn't have the same ring to it.
It is a problem. We need to get rid of this problem, right? And of course, I do it then, but it is how I see it. So there is a problem right now. And if we would do that, we would harm. And we need to clarify that. We need to be able to explain that. And of course, we need to have built up some credibility in order to make people believe us in that what we just say is true and will lead to even more problems, and we need to rethink. And this is, I think, this is so important that you as an individual, you need to be willing to contribute, and as a team, then of course, you need to have that as a team mentality to add to the. So don't see the product owner as an opponent. Instead, find ways to pull him or her into the team, working together on the mission and explaining, hey, we can do it like that, but then things will go down, and it will hurt you as well. And this is, I think, the big thing, which is somehow not widely spread. So when I see or talk with companies, CEOs, it doesn't matter who in the company, it is always the same picture, or mostly the same picture, that you have this tension. There is this end of the food chain developer who's just working down things, and the CEO who's doing pressure because there are new business opportunities, and the POs in between try to negotiate, but always, let's say, down the food chain, not up. So it is always like pressure from up to the bottom. So it's always going down. And this is what we should learn. So in order to stop that, sometimes you need to say no and then follow up with suggestions what we could do better. So when I say this is, let's say, very strict, and most people I know don't really do that because, as you said, subordination maybe, Dennis, it's a problem in this case. Jonathan, how do you see that? So is that something you saw already in companies happening, that let's say hires you have made then later stood up and tried to change something in the company? Or is it more like people are, let's say, more quiet and try to avoid problems of more tension like this and just follow the stream there?
Well, I think we've all seen this at very varying levels. I do have to jump to prepare for another call here in 10 minutes also. But I'd love to draw this back to credibility, right? Because I think something that Zach dropped on us right there as he departed was something we should maybe just think on a little bit more, which is, does your team have a framework for how you make these decisions? And if your team has a framework for how these decisions are, it's almost like, I'm going to say this is the wrong way to say it, I'm going to do it anyways, but it's almost like you can throw your framework in your boss's face at times. I know that's kind of a funny way to say it, but this is how we make our decisions. So when it all rolls downhill to your team, then if your team has a framework, this is how we make these decisions. This is how we try to load balance the work. This is how we try to get to where we need to be and serve all of these needs, but in high priority order, then we can reflect this right back up the chain. And doesn't it seem like as we can kind of train them to expect this from us? Because that's going to immediately give up, maybe not immediately, but that's going to enable us a kind of credibility. We have a decision-making process for this, right? When you drop this on us, we want to be attentive to everything you're asking for. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do it this way again and again and again. Every time that something changes, this is what we're going to do. And I think having a framework, having that systematic approach should maybe build on that. One way we can build on that credibility. Does that make something worth thinking about?
Yeah, the framework aspect is actually an interesting one. The question is, where is this framework coming from? So you can have two. So Zach is, for example, talking about his playbook. He, as a CTO, understands culture very well. So it's very likely that this company where he is working in, or the companies he's working for, won't have much of a problem with the cultural aspects, because it is already decided from top down that this is part of the strategy. So there are even tactical implementations like the playbook. And this is a great thing to have. But if you don't have that in place, and that is quite often the case, then the only chance for the developers is, first of all, ask for something like that. So if they don't get it, the only thing they can do, and this is the credibility part I wanted to talk about, is to do something for themselves in order to prove over time, in form of a framework, this is totally possible, that they are actually capable of adding to the outcome of the company and making sure things getting better if we can change something, right? So I would refer that on an operational level to the engineering aspect. This is what let's say since several months I'm coming to that point basically every stream. Nearly every video, every post I write, because it is so imminent and so clear, became so clear to me that there is one thing, the stuff we as software developers do with our hands, with typing something into the computer and release it to production. This is one thing. This is the practical stuff we do. But what is with the thinking about things? Why are we going to do those things? How are we going to do those things? And what are we aiming for with those actions? So thinking about before I actually going into practice, and think together with my team about that. And I think a playbook represents that already. It just already provides a framework for that. If you don't have that, the bare minimum which is working is actually an engineering principle, engineering principles or engineering culture. And this is what I often see. I don't know, especially in the audience right now, how you feel about that. But let's say the real thinking engineering persons, even though software developers often call themselves engineers, but they actually are no engineers. And, especially in Germany, engineer is a protected term. You need to do a lot in order to become that one. And this is something, so let's say, there's a little bit of inflation going on around this one. So software developer is the overall profession. It's about we are developing something. So no matter if you're an engineer, product owner, if you're a designer, you are all part of the software engineering process. But somehow we refer developer to the programmer/engineering person. But the programmer is then the person who's actually doing the programming. But is the programmer a software engineer or just a worker person? And there is a difference. So I can just take a ticket, work it down and don't ask about it. This is not engineering at all. So just because you understand some principles, it doesn't make you an engineer. If you don't need to repeat a function 5 times, doesn't make you an engineer. This is actually an easy thing to understand. And that should be common sense, but not engineering. Engineering is, when you think about it, it's always the example with the bridge. It's not about how you put concrete into the ground and put some steel into there. It's about why and how and what could be the consequences in the next years to come. Is the terrain safe? How, those things you think about before you actually do. And if you do that as a team with a good mindset, of course, good skills, responsibility, maturity, and eventually ownership, then we are at the three pillars again, then you actually have an engineering culture. And the engineering culture, for me, in my experience, is the one people rely on. As soon as you act like that, especially when you talk with business people like CEOs, I saw that very often. Myself, I do that myself. So this is one of my core things I do. I was, or still am, a software developer, right? But I'm an engineer as well. So when I talk with another person in the C-suite or clients or something like that, I actually don't talk like a software developer. I talk like a software engineer in the role of the CTO. And then people start to listen because you really tell them where are the dangers when we're doing like that. So what can happen to the business? So if you as a software developer can talk about the consequences for the business, if we're doing that like the PO is basically ordering it in that moment, then we hurt the business. Then you are connected to the product, the mission, and the company as a software developer. If you cannot say that, you are disconnected. Thus, you need to be aware of that. And if you can't connect right now, you need to find a way to build up this credibility. And if no one wants to support you, like Zach is doing, like Jonathan is suggesting, then you need to prove your worthiness yourself, build up software engineering culture in your team, best practices, being a mature person, responsible person. You can't do that without permission. And then, step by step, convincing people to listen to you. This is the only chance I personally see for a developer or a team of developers to step up the game in credibility.
So I have a challenge for you before I jump. I loved everything you just said. But actually, this isn't a but I am going to contend before I leave that a playbook exists. That's culture. Culture is our playbook. It exists. What now? If it's not documented, what's happening may not be fully understood, and it may very well be not what we want, but it still is there. Just like saying, well, we haven't built a culture yet. No, you have a culture. How you make decisions, and what your values and beliefs are, and how those are turning into your decision process and your priorities, that's all there. So maybe, just maybe, what you're describing as engineering is very simply to understand and develop a healthy culture.
What's the challenge now?
So the challenge is...
He's just saying problem while being nice.
Actually, no, but I do. I believe the whole calling things challenges instead of problems is a mess. But because we love to sweet talk and whitewash so much stuff that it just drives us crazy. But no. So the challenge is can we take and twist our understanding of engineering and culture just another 10 degrees, just twist it just a little bit and see it from just enough of a different perspective to see them coming together. Our culture is and you've been beating this drum for a while, Adrian. Our engineering process is our culture, and our culture is our engineering process. To think that we can separate those is just nonsense, right? They are one and the same. Our engineering processes and how we make decisions and all these things, our culture is just the power that comes out of doing these things over and over again like a habit, right? That's what culture is. It's just a set of all these habits that we start doing, and sometimes they're good for us and we're happy with the results, and sometimes they're not, but we haven't changed them. So just being aware of all of that and starting to build on that to move your culture toward the aspirational culture that you want. What I'm trying to spit out here is that's engineering, right? All right, I'm late. I got to run. So
great addition. So let's become engineering cultists. All right.
I think so. Let's all think on this. Can we find a new word? Is it engineering culture? Is it something along those lines? what will convey the meaning that
Mm-hmm.
let's do a culture interview. No, let's be open about our engineering practices and how our culture impacts that and how all this fits together, and just be aware of it so that we can build on it.
That's
Anyways.
actually a great point. Yeah, that's absolutely true. The engineering culture is important, and we shouldn't call it development culture because it's the engineering culture. It is the reason why a company actually wants to have this team in place. It is to take that responsibility for the actual process of building a product over time. And this is not just programming. This is basically engineering a product from alpha to omega with all aspects of it. And that's actually engineering, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm in. All right, I'm out, guys. Thanks for inviting me. Loved it. Call
Thanks
me
for
back
having me.
anytime.
Great having you.
All right.
Thanks, Jonathan. See you next time.
Okay.
So, Dennis, what do you think?
I think I'm not streaming tomorrow. I'm very.
You are very, very quiet today. You never interrupted me today. What's going on?
I had a chill stream in mind for tomorrow, but I don't think I can. And
Yeah, for the audience, we just decided last week what we wanted to stream on Thursday, but we both forget what it was.
And I got sick, and it just
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So
that's one part. Anjan had a great comment. Well, a few great comments that I need to get to, but we had an older one from Rage King from Twitch. He says, "I have a team of 8, but they're offshore, but I feel so frustrated. I spent 200K on a prototype. It's not even finished yet. Is it okay to have a team, but have a team that doesn't care about what the product is? Is this okay?"
no, it's not okay. And this
It's not okay, but
no,
also
go ahead.
I also wanna. This is not the team's fault, right? So you're in charge of the budget. If you're the customer, if you're the client, you're accountable to what happens to the money, right? So the problem isn't that the team spent the 200K without being done. The problem was that there was no process of evaluation, 10% into the budget, 10% into the timeline, right? So there needs to be a constant evaluation of, is this still possible? Is this still valuable? I know it's in the backlog, but we made that 2 weeks ago. Is it still relevant? Does it still make sense, right? So this is a breakdown not just in like turnkey delivery. This team provides a service. Service was very bad, but also from setting expectations. If I go to a 5-star hotel and they offer something I don't like, well, it's kind of on me to not choose that hotel. Within limits. There's that, I think, American phrase about the customer is always right, but that phrase, that quotation, is shortened. The full quotation is, the customer is always right in matters of taste, right? So when a customer picks a shoe, don't argue with them with what color they choose. They're always right in regards to what color they like. That doesn't mean that you do everything the customer says. And this comes back to something Jonathan mentioned and something Zach mentioned as well. But you also touched on it. I wrote it down because I wanted to return to it, but I didn't have the energy to play along with the conversation that much. It was something along the lines of, well, sometimes the customer asks me to do something and then we need to push back, etc., etc. But it's interesting now that as a doctor, a physician would never, well, you're the client. A physician would never give you a treatment based on what you think you need. Right? So a physician would never prescribe you something that you want to buy. They never sell you what you want.
Mm-hmm.
They only sell you what you need. Whereas most sales negotiation tactics are set up, I'm building a product, the customer will buy what they want, not what they need. And it's completely backwards with product leadership, right? I know you have these sets of requirements, but it's my responsibility to sell you what you need, not what you said you want. And that's really difficult because the customer expects to be in the sales seat of, no, I'm paying for this. I'm expecting you to deliver what I want, not what you think I need. Right? So, and a lot of times engineers struggle to put themselves into the position of the physician and say, no, that's what you want. I get it. But I have no proof that that's what you need. If I give you that, here's what can happen. You might, I'm not saying this will happen, but we might go over budget, as that previous comment mentioned. You might spend 200K and we won't be finished. That can happen. I can't guarantee that that won't happen. That's just one of the outcomes. Even if I say that one of the outcomes is that we're on time, on budget, I can't guarantee that we delivered that one exactly. Right? So maybe there's only a 10% chance that we pick that one, and all the other ones we pick by accident. Right? So it's this constant reevaluation of what it is you need, and to then constrain it down to this question of what it is you need right now. If we're so wrong about everything, what it is you need right now that can serve us to prove future hypotheses. That's essentially extreme programming, agile process, agile culture in a nutshell. What do you think?
So first of all, you described the doctor, the physician, as a person who's actually doing engineering. So this is basically not really engineering, but taking care of the long run. It doesn't make sense to sell you just short-term something. So actually, I'm not 100% sure it's always the case, but I think the vast majority is. And the very same should be the case for us as persons who are taking ownership for the product. So being a connected person, contributing to the mission of the company. And if we don't act like this, so then it's actually is a little bit of maybe an ego thing, not caring about that. If we just say, I don't care, they haven't asked me, so it's their problem. I just push something right now, then I go home. I personally don't want to be a person like that, because so I couldn't be proud of myself. So let's be honest now. This is just you don't learn anything, right? It is like you don't fail in some way. You don't see long-term consequences, or you don't understand them because you don't care for them. So you won't grow. You will never become a real senior person. And I don't want to be like that. So first of all, and regarding the team, he mentioned, so spending an interesting sum for a small to medium, actually small business or investment, and things don't get done. So I would get to the practical question. This is typical agency work. It's called offshoring or nearshoring sometimes, but it's agency work. So there is someone probably in their team who is some form of team lead. But in reality, they are doing exactly this ego-driven thing. They don't really care about the product. Those are no employees. They cannot be connected. It's not possible.
Because the wrong question to ask is, when will they be done? That's the wrong question to ask. Right? The right question to ask is, well, you've invested 200K and it's not done. What is what you got worth? That's the right question to ask. You've invested 200K. What is the ROI on 200K? If the answer is 0, then stop investing. Right? So don't reward this team's lack of competence. If you do, you'll also be complicit in being incompetent. Right? So the customer and the engineering team are both accountable for what's going on. Right? So that's why the checks and balances are necessary. Otherwise, they would just sell something off the shelf. He says, so far, no ROI. So the better question would be, how much of that money can you get back? If nothing, then your future trajectory is how much money do you want to continue betting on this roulette table? Because if you don't have a stop, you don't have a stop limit, then you'll create a reality thinking that, oh, I invested 200K, it's not worth anything yet. But if I invest another 200K, it's definitely gonna be worth more than what I had originally in mind. That's sunk cost fallacy, right? The more I invest into it, in the end, the more it will sort of bring to, even though we didn't make the 200K stretch mark, the 200K stretch goal. The problem with that is that you create this relationship with the engineering team where they constantly feel like they owe you something. So there's that constant looming threat of you will want them to do something for free. And when things go bad, or when you do go to market and it's successful and there's scaling issues, that's the last time when you want those people who have everything under their control to be doing stuff for free, because they'll be negligent, because they'll be irresponsible, because they'll be unmotivated, right? He says, I feel like I'm 90% there. What you feel is irrelevant, right? So if you feel like you're 90% there, there's probably somewhere in the ballpark of 200K to 600K more money to be spent before you can actually validate that. Now, that doesn't mean that your gut feeling isn't optimistic, that you shouldn't follow it. But you should match your gut feeling with data. Somebody should be able to independently verify that you're 90% there without your gut feeling.
Yeah,
Because
I
otherwise,
assume they don't do in an agile way, so there is no feedback loop, there is no continuous delivery. So otherwise, Rage King in this case would know about that, because if you work for months on a project and you don't know exactly where you are and you need to have a gut feeling, that's strange. So where are the numbers? What is the team reporting to you on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, he says, I want to launch in 5 months, but there are so many bugs. That's not going to launch anytime soon. Right? So what you need to get evidence on is that if you ask for something to be done in a month, you want to learn how to get that done in a month. If what you ask for takes 6 weeks, then stop asking for more than 2 weeks worth of stuff. Right? So you want to learn what the cadence is of what is the smallest piece of want or need that I can buy from the team. So what I get is exactly what I ordered, right? So if it's 1 month worth of features, it's 2 weeks off. 3 weeks worth of features, it's 1 week off. 1 week worth of features, it's 1 week off. Oh, that's the worst one. 2 days worth of features, I get nothing. 3 weeks go by, 4 weeks go by, and then you squeeze that down so that you have to make hard decisions on what features you have, what qualities you care about, what capabilities you care about, what verticality or what parallel work of features you care about, so that when you ask, okay, now I only want this, I want the entire team to work only on this for the entire week, and if we get 80% of that, we call it success. Once you get to that level, then you can negotiate with them. Then you can have plans about the next 5 months. That is called planning accuracy.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to help the team get to a, above 95% planning accuracy. Because outside of that, any kind of agreement, there will be this constant lack of trust. They might be capable, you might be capable, but the partnership doesn't trust each other. Right. So
the credibility part.
Yeah, it's not credible, right? So you say they'll be done in they said 2 weeks. I know that means 5, right? So you're doing this spreadsheet thing to each other where you're buffering each other's promises and estimates. And, I have this friend who, when I invite them, they always arrive 15 minutes late. And then I start buffering for them. No, that's silly. Don't buffer for them. This is a business. This is not some weird frat party in college or on campus, right? So if your mission critical, if you're paying them by the hour, and if them being punctual is mission critical to you, as at least as far as finances are concerned, then you need to have some kind of planning accuracy for how much money is being spent. Yeah, we can take that offline. It's a great. I see you've connected. You've suggested connecting. No, that's
Yeah,
fine.
might make sense to talk about
Yeah,
that.
connect with
probably.
Adrian, connect with myself, depending on who you click with more. Raul asks, what is the capacity for the team using the feedback from past sprints? No, that's the worst kind of. No, that's no capacity for the team. You want to be looking for in the future,
Yeah.
right? Because the retrospectives are there to judge the playbook. You're having retrospectives to check the playbook. The capacity of the team has nothing to do with the past velocity of the team, right? So the capacity of the team basically says, "Hey, team, do you think you can do this?" And the team says, "We have capacity for it, sure," but that doesn't mean that they will deliver on it, right? So planning accuracy has to do with the aspect of how confident is the team's promise to an outside observer. I can tell you I have capacity all night long. But
what is capacity? Capacity does not mean there's a unit and you get something done in a unit. It just means that you can work for a unit, and
capacity is
this is
usually
this is the reason why things like Scrum don't work very well,
yes,
and especially
capacity
no
is
Agile at all.
usually
It
capacity is usually implying a backlog, right? So and backlog planning has this drawback of somebody who is prioritizing is not currently with the team, right? So the capacity should only be focusing on the capabilities of the team, right? So you should, qualitatively, does this team have the capacity to handle a project like this, right? So capability wise, not do they have the days on the calendar to do it, because that's the wrong question, right? Because then you might say, oh, do we have the capacity? Well, do we have the availability?
But I would take this even further, because you let the strategic part out of it, because there is the team who needs to be able to do that, but the business needs to be able to sustain that, which means that
Yes.
in an agile way you start with an iteration and then you take a look what you're doing next. And on some point in time, you need to make redirections, you need to change direction, you need to reconsider things, which means you cannot predict the future, which means that the best thing you can do is to take a look how effective your team communicates with the business stakeholders, and then you make sure you can sustain that. I think those are the most critical issues I see when.
The point, I agree with you with this Scrum problem. Yes, on that part, but planning is not about predicting the future.
No, I never said that.
Well, you said the words predicting the future.
No, you can't predict the future, I said.
You can't predict the future, right? So planning is only for us to put the constraints on paper so that we're forced to make decisions. I can plan and I can say, I have slots for 10 meetings tomorrow. I have a capacity of 10. And I'll be late for 3 and I'll cancel 1, and one of them I'll be a no-show because I'll be blowing my nose. Right? So that doesn't mean that I did have capacity for 10 or didn't have capacity for 10. That only means that I have chosen the wrong strategy for how to organize my time tomorrow. Right? So planning has nothing to do with predicting the future. Planning has to do with communicating constraint. A very good example of planning is today I got invited to a seminar and I double booked it accidentally. Capacity-wise, there was room on my calendar. What I missed was I got the time zone wrong and I had 2 meetings at the same time. So I had the capacity, but I couldn't be in 2 meetings at the same time, right? That is not a capacity problem. that is me not making a decision because I didn't understand the constraints. I didn't compare them correctly, right? That's what we want to do. We want to make those decisions. Now, nothing bad came out of that, right? So there was no terrible consequences out of that. What I want to bring it back to.
I wouldn't call it still. I wouldn't call it planning because actually you don't plan. You create a framework which you work in, and then you do
Yeah.
iterations.
Yeah,
And on
exactly.
the iterations you make decisions. This is a form of continuously making decisions. And I think this is in the example
there is-
from Rage King. This is what went wrong. So
Yes,
that this
yes.
process wasn't there. So they thought they had planned something. In reality, there is a meeting every week, and in this, why not every day, in form of a report or something like that. So how can you make decisions if you get 1 week, let's say, worth of a report, and you don't, it is not transparent. It is what happened on day one, what was the problem on day two.
Right.
This is most of the time, no problem. This is most of the time not really transparent in a weekly report. So at best you have a daily report, you feel how it's going, and the developers tell you, hey, we have problems here and there, and we need to go forward or need to have more time in that case because of that. So this is the topic of the show. This is the credibility. Those developers, they don't even try to become credible. They don't care. This is
In regards to terminology, there's a difference between an iteration and an increment. Right, so, and Rage King actually highlighted this mistake as well. Where is it? The bad thing is I'm not an engineer, dev. I'm in a different field. I meet with the team once per week.
This is what I mean, once per week. This is not enough.
And that is an iteration. That is not an increment. Right, so what is the difference here? Right, so when we're talking about the calendar, it doesn't matter how often you meet with the team. Weekly, monthly, whatever. The question is, how often do they create increments? That's what you want to get right. Right. So an increment is something that can be published to the customer. Now, if your plan is to go to the customer in 5 months' time, for the first time, whatever is ready then, that is a recipe for disaster. Because what the customer wants is that in 5 months' time, that iteration, whatever feature they're using, has been refined in 1,000 increments, so that it's not the first time that when they're touching a feature, that they're the first person ever touching that feature in production. That's the worst way about building software, right? So what you want to get right is to get the team down to a cadence where they create increments of the software, deployed to the user, published, released. Maybe not to the wider public, but at least one person who is not you and who is not them. So it's actually being demoed on something that is representative of your ideal customer profile of a paying client. Even if you're paying them to try out the software, to see if it's valuable to them, to actually make them use it. Maybe doc feed it internally inside your team if that is available to you. But the point is that an increment needs to be created where it can close the loop of the team receiving feedback. That is the only way they can improve. Because in their backlog, there will be 1,000, I'm exaggerating, but there will be 10 assumptions that are incorrect. You got to minimize the amount of time that you're wrong, right? Every wrong assumption makes you deviate from your ideal roadmap, right? So agile is not about not having a plan, just throwing stuff over the wall and building software willy-nilly. The point about agile is to minimize the amount of time that you're wrong, right? So here's all these requirements. Here's the contract that has these 1,000 features. No, let's assume that's all wrong, right? So we want to minimize the amount of time where we say, okay, in this space, we've now deployed, 1% of the features. Of this 1%, out of 7 things, we were wrong about 3. And then that you want to fix. so that the next increment you're wrong about less things. Because if you're wrong for the vast plurality or majority of the feature, right? So there are things that the user doesn't need, or there are things that the user doesn't like, or there are things that don't work because they're buggy. Bugs are requirements that have escaped the analysis process. Now, if that process takes 5 months, shame on you, right? You ordered it.
Let's take a look. He's giving us some information, and when I read through this information, I get clearly to the conclusion that there is work going on, and it seems to be on a regular basis. I hope.
Yeah,
so.
definitely.
I understand that the people are actually working full time on the project. This explains why he already spent so much money on that. The point here is. What's wrong? So first of all, I think the way of getting feedback from what people are doing is wrong in this case. That we having PRs in a process where you don't communicate much because once a week and a little bit of Slack is not enough. So PRs are a bad thing. You should have synchronous communication, especially when you when you start to don't trust. I would like to go on here.
First time.
Because it is a little bit like you want to get into communication again. You have complained in the beginning that you want to talk to those people and you don't really understand them because you are not a software developer or engineer yourself. So you don't know if they're doing right or wrong, which means that you have no other choice than reducing that. Actually closing the gap, or the frequency is the correct word, the frequency down to once a day. So you need to have a daily report, and they should push everything they do straight on trunk without having reports every day and talk about that. And then you know where you are, right? And fractional CTOs can help in this case. Maybe what I would suggest first is not just hire someone doing that. Instead, first understand your problem and talk with the people about that before you hire something, because there are so many people out there who would do that in a different way. You have already invested a lot of money. And I don't know exactly how long you can sustain that or you want to sustain that. So make sure you understand the problem before you hire anyone. So make some form of audit. This is more important right now before you go to hire someone to fix a problem, which is possibly not fixable.
Yeah, the thing is that because you've invested so much money into it, you're biased into thinking that what you have is almost done and that it is valuable. But if the whole point of the development process, the whole point of, you ask this question, should I recruit a CTO? The whole point of the CTO is to validate, strategically speaking, this idea of, does it make sense for us to build this technology? Right? So is there a silver lining at the end of the tunnel? So is there a light at the end of the tunnel where we say, if we spend less than $500,000 in engineering costs in 3 years, this is the OpEx, this is the maintenance cost, and at this much customer growth, we will make back the money within 4 years, break even, 5 years, first year of profit. That's what you need first before you pay anything into development costs. Right? So the problem is, if your time horizon is investment versus profitability 1 to 5, if you go from 200K investment to 400K investment, you might be increasing that from 5 years to 10 years. And if you're even wrong about that, just by an order of magnitude of 2, just by a difference of 2, not even an order of magnitude, then you're off by another 10 years. So that's 20 years to make that back the money that you just invested into the technology. And most companies simply don't survive that. Plus, there will be maintenance issues. The technology will become
It's not built once. This is one of the big problems.
It's not live. If it's not profitable and live, you'll have to rebuild it because all of the technology will become stale. all of the technology will no longer work on modern systems, on modern cloud technologies, with modern libraries. So even if you stopped investing into the building of the software and sort of released the team from its duties, you'll have to hire a new team to modernize it. Right? So you need to understand that your time horizon for actual profitability, you need to reach that provably within the next year. If you want to go live for the first time in 5 months, the right way about that is to figure out what is my strategy for the money I'm investing. Because right now, this is not a depreciating asset. This is not even an asset.
It is not known as no.
Right?
It's not.
It is just a loss. It is a 200K loss. You didn't invest into anything. Right? Because the investment means that the engineers can stop working on it and that it is alive somewhere, and now some other team can pick it up, maintain it, and you have a live customer base servicing it. Some part of that is an asset, but not everything. And if you've not gone live that way yet,
So for example, I would have a good example for that. So what we do
I do have a
is
hard
in web.
stop though, so we gotta take it
In-
offline with him.
But in Webber, for example, we started to build, especially because of that, SaaS. So we actually built SaaS, and the companies who are using that customized business to business SaaS, they see their asset as the value which they can create with that kind of software, but not the software itself. This is actually our asset. And the point behind that is, first of all, it's always like, oh, I can't imagine how it shall work. But in reality, after just half an hour of work, everyone understands, yeah, this is actually what we need. Because everyone right now, it wasn't 10 years ago, but today it is like that. You build software and it becomes obsolete after a year. And you work constantly to get it out of this obsolete state, legacy state, obsolete state, legacy state. Come on, we need to do some updates. And of course, it creates value, but the part which creates value is not the software, it's the business model. And what you need to do is make sure that your business model is working, and then the technology below that is not crashing your company. And this is what you are in a dangerous situation right now. You need to make sure that you get out of this situation, make sure that your stuff is getting online somehow, even if it's not done and ready yet.
It needs to go to customers.
Exactly. You need to feedback of the customer. Is it even worth it?
Software to
right?
customers. Yes.
Yeah.
You cannot afford to wait 6 months to launch, right? So if you want to be on time, you have to be on time every day. So if you're planning a perfect, picturesque launch in 5 months, you got to make 100 launches, 100 deploys from between now and then, and you got to be accurate on every single one of them, because otherwise you won't make it. That's one thing. The second thing is, you need to understand the cash flow of profitability. When the software is done, how long does it take for profit to kick in? Because between done and profitability, just having the software requires a constant burn of money, of maintenance, at probably the same rate you spent building it. So if you're spending 200K now, I don't know how much that is per month. Let's say it's 50K per month, and it's been 4 months now. That means that once it's done, between done and profitability, you still spend 50K per month. Because the team needs to be available, because there will be bugs, there will be maintenance issues. If it's successful,
are bugs, you said.
There are bugs, yes. If it's successful, there will be scalability issues. If it's super successful, there will be security issues. If it's very much super successful, there will be governance and compliance issues, right? So you got to be ready for that. Like, if you're not ready for that, I would say your business strategy is inadequate. Like, the agency can build you a piece of software, but it's hugely disconnected with the success of your business, right? So my recommendation would be focus on the success of your business. Focus on the success of your investment. You need to make sure, are you going to build it, continue investing money into this, or are you, saving part of the money, investing it into appreciating assets for a rainy day? and now try to figure out how to make this 200K investment viable.
Mhm.
What would it take with the features that you do have up until now to just publish that? Is that useful to anybody? Who is that useful to? Because if it's not useful,
At least for feedback.
at least for feedback. If it's not useful, then stop what you're doing. Because this team does not know how to work well with you, and they might accidentally burn all your budget. You want to be done with the project before you run out of money, before you run out of time.
So you should really think about that. And I just highlighted a comment. It becomes obsolete in 1 year. What the fuck? Yeah, it does. It doesn't mean that it's away or something like that. But it's meant like if no one cares for that, and taking care is not just, hey, I spend another K per month and someone is from time to time updating the npm packages. No. We're talking about at least a single person working constantly on this solution to keep it up to date, fixing bugs, adding new features to make the solution still worth using it. And this is what we need to count in. Most people think that, hey, you build it for $500,000 and then maybe a little bit of hosting. No. This is not how it works. This is a recipe for legacy. And legacy is extremely expensive because after 2 to 3 years, you start investing the very same amount of money, and you need to hope that your business model rocketed in order to make yourself able to pay that, which is maybe the case for Netflix or some other companies.
Cash flow is king. You need to understand. You need to connect the dots, and need to help the agency understand how the features make revenue, how they connect the dots. Because you probably don't need everything what you would consider 100% for cash flow positivity. You gotta get the cash flow rolling in very quickly so that the software starts paying for its own maintenance, or at least the keeping alive costs, keeping the lights on costs. Another aspect is that I forgot, and I need to go. Check in with us regarding. Check in with Adrian because you already connected. But here's our links. Here's Adrian, and here's my links. Let's get in touch offline. On the note of, so I will still spend money after it's done. The scariest thing I have now is I have 3 good devs, but if 1 or 2 leave, that's a big.
You are not the only one who's scared about that.
Yeah, you don't know who's scared about that, right? So that's normal, right? So it's like building a house. You can change anything you want in a house until it's built. You build it, the first family moves in. Any kind of room change takes 10 years. Any kind of major change takes 10 years because now people live in that house. It was very easy to do before it was built, which is what you're going through now. Once it's built, once it has problems, once it has operational complexity, once it has real users actually using it, you're lucky if nobody's using it. Then you can just scrap it and do it from scratch. But if somebody is using it, all decisions slowly stretch on a much longer time horizon, and it takes very good engineering to get that time horizon back into a linear curve. That's what good tech debt management is. And by the sound of it, this at least from what you're telling us, this team does not show evidence of being diligent in software management, in continuous delivery. No, I'm not saying they're bad people, but they might have given you exactly what you've asked for, and what you need is a little bit beyond what you asked for. Because you might not be experienced, or because they saw a huge opportunity in you having money and you sort of being very much trusting. But if you're too trusting and you have a lot of money, then they don't really have a chance to show you that they're competent. Because if it's only the other way around, if in 5 months you will declare this a success or a victory, then there's no incremental nature of building competency. It just shows thumbs up or thumbs down once deadline is over. And that is not a very good way of building a team. That is just how you sort of do turnkey, and then you say yes or no. Anyway, I do need to. Yeah, let's chat.
Mhm.
And Raul, April was here with us. I'm sorry I ignored your comment at the very beginning, but we had a lot of people on stage. Malak had a great comment earlier. Wasn't a question. Thomas also had a very long comment. We will address it in the after show. I do need to jump off. Adrian, if you want to continue on with
I will.
Our chat discussion, go ahead. I need some rest and I need dinner. Thank you so much for being with us today. Great topic.
Mhm.
We're skipping tomorrow's stream. I'm not fit enough to lead a 2-hour stream. So
I will connect us three. I have the email address.
Please.
I make a Calendly thing where we can talk after the
yeah,
show.
thank you, Hugh.
Good. Okay.
chat.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Tell me if we stream tomorrow or if I stream alone. Just tell me.
You can stream. You can stream if you want. I can tag along passively, but I'm too tired to pick a topic. And let's discuss at least offline. I have the kids home tomorrow, so that's gonna be easier.
Good.
Let's chat.
Good. So thank you
Okay.
very much, and I will wrap up the stream right now.
Cool. I'm not
let's
pressing the
go.
red button. I'm taking myself off stage. Ciao.
See you then. Bye bye. So we've talked today about developer credibility, and we just saw with Rage King what he just told us was a very interesting story. It's actually no story; it's a very real story, and actually, let's say a little bit sad, to be honest. But this is the reality, and this is one of those reasons I actually stream, and I think this is the same with Dennis. We saw so much. So I'm 24 years now in the business, and I saw so many things going wrong. I've done things myself in the wrong way, of course. I lost money. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I know how fast you can actually burn money, right? So some developers, let's say 3 to 4 developers in a team, and it's going straight to $500,000 a year, right? With every expense of everything. So if you're doing the right, or let's say wrong decisions in that case, it can suddenly burn down your money. It can threaten the entire company, the salaries, the persons behind that, the families. And in order to make that right, you need to make sure that the company is working. And how do you actually make sure that the company is working? Yeah, well, it is always the same. Do it in a mature and responsible way. Do a lot of communication and make sure that everything is working. Make sure that you don't point a finger at someone in the team or in the business or the product owner and say, but this is a person who's, ignorant, toxic, I don't know, the boss type. This is not important in that moment. Have you yourself have done right everything? So have you cleaned up everything? Have you put every bit of energy you had into creating a better environment in your proximity? Have you introduced good practices to work? Have you worked on your own credibility? Have you taken ownership? Have you mentored others? Have you made sure that things are actually going to be better? Or in other terms, have you contributed to something higher than you are yourself? And if you cannot ask this question for yourself, you need to work on that one first. So that means that you as a person, you need to make sure that you are actually someone worth trusting in. And please ask yourself for a moment right now here in the stream, are you such a person? Can others rely on you every day, every hour, when it counts and when it not counts? When people take a look and when no one is there? Friday evening, no one is there anymore. Do you take care of everything? Do you really do that every Friday? Or do you procrastinate a lot? But oftentimes when people and teams, when I join teams and help teams to get things done, again, because of my own experience, and I've done, as I said, things wrong, then oftentimes it's this finger pointing everywhere. And finger pointing shows me, that most of the people are actually not doing what they are supposed to. They don't take responsibility at all. And that's the reality. Let's be honest here. Why should I be polite here? I think most developers are not really responsible. They find reasons. I talk often about, the art of war, the war of art, sorry, from Stephen Pressfield. Resistance versus the muse. So how often do you have the muse? How often do you need discipline in order to get things done? And how often resistance is, your ego, your personal inner voice telling you don't need to do that. The other one is the bad person. I need to go home now. I don't want to work this evening. I just want to, watch Netflix. I can do that tomorrow. And when you have this voice very often, and I would suppose you need to work on your trustworthiness or your credibility. Call it like you want. I need to do it myself as well. I always see where a little bit, it drops sometimes. Sometimes I don't post that much on LinkedIn where I expect I should do that. I expect it from myself because I told everyone that's my mission. But sometimes I don't do that. And it is not always the case that, hey, it is sometimes I just don't want to. And that's okay, I think, from time to time. But overall, I need to ask myself, am I a trustworthy person? Do I constantly contribute to others? These days I can say yes. I'm family father, I'm entrepreneur, I'm employer, I'm taking care of things, I'm taking care of the problems of my clients, customers and users, of my employees, of my family, of course. I do that. But it wasn't always like that. And this is one of those things I think every one of you should take care of as well. This idea of what can I do in order to contribute to my surrounding, to my friends, family, colleagues, peers. And before you have done that or accomplished that, you actually cannot really point a finger at others and say, yeah, but this environment here is bad. If you don't try to contribute, you don't try to change anything. And if you have tried to change something for quite a while now, then you can judge and say, well, I can't change anything here. I've tried. I really tried. I've done everything I could. Then it's maybe time to leave and say, nothing to change here. My peers don't want to. But we need to take care of what we're doing and responsibility and ownership of what we do. And when we do that, we take ownership of the company, because this is the reason why we are part as software developers of a company. We need to take responsibility for the engineering part. And we only can do that if we act like engineers. And engineers take care of what actually happens outside of their IDE as well. And this is what we all should learn today. This is the reason why I wanted to stream today about this topic. And I hope you all learned something about that. Reflect yourself a little bit, learning how to spot your own inner resistance. And when you actually should, invoke some discipline in order to get things done the right way. And if everyone in the team around you does that, or maybe gets infused because you have told them to do so, or you were a role model, maybe you told them as an example how we could improve the team, and then the entire team levels up and plays a better game, then the overall credibility will become better, and you will see a significant change in how the perceptions of business people, stakeholders, product owners, clients will become actually. They will view you in a better light. Suddenly when you say you have doubt that this is a good idea, suddenly they will say, oh yes, maybe we should change something. Because last time it was already like you have said. And it is not the case if you don't have this trustworthiness. Why? Why should it be happen, right? Everyone needs to earn that. And especially we down in the food chain, we developers, we need to think about that a little bit more often than others maybe. Because we have a job most people don't understand. It takes years to understand what we do for ourselves. I don't understand the code I've written 2 months ago. I need to work in there, right? It's hard to understand. It takes years of experience. So how can we expect that someone who's not able to understand this discipline, can trust us when we just, toss some special buzzwords out there and say, because of this and that, I don't think it's working. We need to display that. We need to not show that by explaining complex terms or methodology or something like that. We need to explain that by being good human people who can do that, with body language, with trustworthiness, because we are, a valuable part of the team. We are cornerstones of the team, contributors to the product. We are partners of the business stakeholders, engineering partners. So I like to, I often say clients, but most of my clients, we call ourselves partners because we're doing SaaS software and we help them to do their business, and we see ourselves as their partners, not as their fulfilling department or our clients or something like that. And you need to break those gaps. This is a disconnect you don't want to have. It doesn't help you at all. What you need to do is get things done the right way long term. And to do that, you need to take responsibility and do everything you can before you stop or before you start to actually do the finger pointing stuff and, find people who are actually responsible for your suffering. Most of the time, it's up to yourself, And this is just what I learned over so many, more than 2 decades now. And in the first years, I was totally ignorant about that. And I made so many mistakes. And it took years. So especially if you're a younger person, take that to heart, because it may save you several lives, not lives, but several years of things, of let's say bad years, where you could do something good instead, right? Or speed things up a little bit for you. I hope that helped everyone today. I will wrap up now. We will take a look if we have the stream tomorrow. I need to find a topic. I wasn't aware of that. I stream alone, but probably we actually do at least 1 hour tomorrow, same time, 16 CEST, so Central European summertime. We have summertime right now here in Europe. I forgot that last time, so sorry for giving the wrong date. And yes, then I'd probably go with some cultural topic again, engineering culture, because this is something I'm really burning for about right now. And feel free to join our blogs. And see you tomorrow then. I thank everyone, and I will run 1 or 2 clips, and then we will see us tomorrow. Goodbye, everyone. So.
Kinds of one thing. Number one, there's the engineering feedback, right?
Okay.
I'm going to deliver this change today to find out if it breaks it. And then there's the business feedback. I'm going to deliver the smallest slice of this next feature to find out if it's valuable and deliver that and get feedback. But
figure out if it's safe to merge and whether it's safe to continue with these requirements.
Yeah.
That's all.
Just because it passes all the tests doesn't mean that it doesn't break something in production once it finally gets to a production environment. I try to have a high level of confidence, but we're never 100% sure.
Yeah.
And so we want to get feedback as rapidly as possible in the engineering thing. People tell me there's no value in delivering anything until it's feature complete. No. I know it's stable. I want to make sure we're on the right track. I don't want to invest too much money in this idea. I don't want to assume my idea is correct. I want to assume my idea is incorrect. It's a scientific experiment. I'm trying to invalidate the hypothesis. And we should be ecstatic when it's successful and just accept when it's not. Mm-hmm. And then how do we change course to chase the value instead of just assuming value?
I would like to add something to the term of confidence. I think confidence doesn't mean that you are 100%, as you said, 100% safe to deploy. It's about to be confident that you can handle a situation even if something happened, but you expect feedback. So what you definitely get is feedback. And if the feedback is a negative, you can react quickly on that. So this is confidence. It's not about, oh, I'm 100% sure that nothing will happen. I think this is a big misconception.
No, I agree. And people focus on the wrong thing. I want to make sure that everything is perfect before we deliver. That's the wrong thing.
So most small to medium-sized companies are mostly consistent of developers, software engineers. And if you introduce software engineering, you should avoid to do a lot of infrastructure operations, because this does not bring you any money, any value. This is just a cost factor. And if you can outsource this cost factor, it is actually a good point. Since outsourcing is nearly impossible to achieve while not being bound to those obligations than yourself, you need to instead buy something which does that for you and adapt your process to it. But of course this does have its limitations as well and its downsides, which means that if you have something special, it will probably mean that you need to have workarounds. I understand that, but in my own experience I have to say that this is rarely the case. It is the same as I had in my articles with Tailwind. There is an upper ceiling of complexity. So you shouldn't just implement infrastructure or operations because it's possible or someone thinks that could be a good thing in the future.